The air inside the grand lecture hall of Crownlight Academy tasted of recycled nitrogen and suppressed panic. It was a sterile, metallic scent, familiar to anyone who had spent more than 6 months on a station hovering precariously over the neutral zone. The lighting was cold, a clinical white that cast no forgiving shadows, designed to expose every micro-expression of the 300 cadets seated in the tiered rows. Headmistress Sable Nix entered the room, and the ambient noise died instantly. She did not walk so much as flow a predatory grace inherent to her feline biology. Her boots, reinforced with kinetic dampers, made a sharp, rhythmic clicking sound against the obsidian floor tiles. It was the only sound in the vast chamber. Her fur was the color of deep space, sleek and groomed to perfection, contrasted by the high collar of her crimson administrative uniform. Her eyes, vertical slits of burning gold, swept across the room like a radar dish. She was not just a teacher. She was a warning system wrapped in silk and authority. Sable stopped at the center of the podium. She placed a single gloved hand on the console. The holographic interface bloomed into existence, casting an underlight on her sharp features. "Welcome to Crownlight," she said. Her voice was a low purr that vibrated in the chest cavities of those in the front row. "You are here because the galaxy is breaking. You are here to learn how to hold the pieces together until they cut you." She did not smile. Smiling was a luxury for civilians. High above the podium, the null glass lattice shimmered. It was the station's crown jewel and its darkest secret, a web of invisible probability-calculating glass that ran through the architecture of the academy. Usually, it remained dormant during orientation. Today, however, the air above the students rippled like heat over asphalt. The lattice was active. It was hungry. At the very back of the hall, in the highest row, where the light was dimmest, Hugh sat motionless. He was human, or at least he appeared to be. He wore the standard-issue gray flight suit which hung slightly loose on his frame. His hair was dark, unkempt, but not messy, and his face was a mask of absolute neutrality. While other students fidgeted, checked their wrist comps, or exchanged nervous glances, Hugh was still. He possessed the stillness of a statue in a graveyard. His eyes, dark and heavy-lidded, watched the headmistress, but his focus seemed to be 1,000 miles behind her. He should have been invisible. He was designed to be overlooked. He was the background noise in a photograph. Yet the room knew he was there. A low hum began to emanate from the walls. The sensors embedded in the null glass, usually programmed to sweep the room in a grid pattern, twitched. A dozen optical nodes on the ceiling swiveled in unison, bypassing the 299 students in front of them. They locked onto the back row. They locked onto Hugh. Standing to the right of the headmistress was her elite cadre, the students known across the sector as the top girls. They were the prefects, the enforcers, the best of the best. May stood at the forefront. She was a feline alien of the same lineage as the headmistress, though her fur was a pale, icy silver. Her posture was rigid, her tail held perfectly still. She held a datapad, her claws hovering over the screen. She was the picture of aristocratic perfection, but her ears swiveled back, flattened against her skull. "Headmistress," May whispered, her voice tight. "The telemetry is drifting." "Adjust it, May," Sable replied without turning her head. "I cannot," May said. "The system is overriding manual input. It is ignoring the roster." Beside May stood Mamie. She was small, barely reaching May's shoulder, with skin the color of polished teal and large, multifaceted eyes that blinked independently. She shifted her weight from foot to foot, a ball of nervous energy. "Maybe the system is just bored," Mamie muttered, though her usual grin was absent. "I would be bored scanning this lot. Look at them. They look like they are waiting for a funeral." On May's other side was Elsie. She was tall and slender, her skin translucent enough to show the faint blue pulse of bioelectricity running through her veins. She was an empathic sensor, capable of hearing the emotional resonance of those around her. Elsie flinched, raising a hand to her temple. "It is not boredom," Elsie said softly. Her voice sounded like wind through hollow reeds. "It is curiosity. The lattice is listening. It is listening to him." She did not point, but they all knew who she meant. And finally, there was Laura. She stood slightly apart from the group, her arms crossed. She looked human, though her eyes reflected the light with a synthetic sheen that suggested genetic tampering. Laura did not look at the console. She looked directly at the back row. She looked at Hugh. Her expression was not one of confusion, but of calculation. She was solving an equation, and Hugh was the variable that made the math work. "Initiate the first scan," Sable commanded, her voice cutting through the rising murmur of the students. "Let us see what we have to work with this year." May tapped the command key. Initiating scan sequence. Row 1. The light from the null glass intensified. A beam of coherent light, invisible to the naked eye, but heavy on the psyche, swept across the front row. Data scrolled rapidly on the giant holographic display above the podium: heart rates, neural density, probability of insubordination, tactical aptitude. "Row 2, May announced. The beam moved up. Row 3. Then the machine disobeyed. Instead of moving to row 4, the sensors whirred violently. The beam snapped upward, bypassing the entire middle section of the auditorium. It hit the back wall. It hit Hugh. For a second, nothing happened. Hugh did not flinch. He did not blink. He sat there, bathed in the invisible interrogation of the machine, looking bored. Then, the beam fractured. It split, ricocheting off Hugh as if he were a mirror, and slammed into the student sitting 3 seats away from him. The student was a young recruit named Candidate Vance, an eager-looking boy with bright red hair, who had been smiling nervously just seconds before. The corrupted scan beam hit him square in the chest. There was no explosion. There was no heat. There was simply a sound like a wet sheet being torn in half. Candidate Vance gasped. He looked down at his hands. They were becoming transparent. The reality around him seemed to stutter. He tried to stand, but his legs were already gone, replaced by streaming lines of code and static. "Help," Vance whispered. His voice did not echo. It sounded like it was coming from inside a tin can located 3 rooms away. "Cut the power," Sable roared, her composure cracking for the first time. May hammered the emergency abort key. "I am trying. The interface is locked out." Vance looked up, his eyes wide with a terror that went beyond death. He looked at Hugh. He reached out a fading hand toward the silent boy in the back row. "It is cold," Vance said. And then he was gone. He did not die. He was deleted. The space where he had been sitting was empty. Not just empty of a person, but empty of air, empty of dust. For 1 microsecond, a perfect vacuum existed in his seat, causing a sharp crack of thunder as the atmosphere rushed in to fill the void. Silence slammed back into the room. It was absolute. 300 students stopped breathing at the same time. Hugh brushed a speck of invisible dust from his knee. He had not moved to help. He had not recoiled. He had simply watched. Headmistress Sable Nix slammed her hand onto the console, shattering the holographic projection. The lights in the room flickered and turned a harsh, emergency red. "Security Protocol Alpha 9, Sable barked. "Lock the doors. No one leaves." She turned her gaze to the back row. Her pupils had expanded until her eyes were almost entirely black. The air around her seemed to vibrate with suppressed violence. She was not looking at a student anymore. She was looking at a threat. "Everyone remain in your seats," Sable announced, her voice magically amplified to boom off the walls. "We have experienced a technical malfunction with the projection matrix. Do not be alarmed. The candidate has been safely transported to the infirmary via emergency teleportation." It was a lie. A blatant, clumsy lie. Teleportation did not sound like tearing fabric. Teleportation did not leave the smell of ozone and fear. But the students stayed seated, because the only thing scarier than the vanishing boy was the look on the headmistress's face. Sable motioned to her elite team. "Bring him down, now." The top girls moved instantly. They ascended the stairs of the lecture hall, their movements synchronized and efficient. They were predators closing in on a wounded animal. Or perhaps they were bomb disposal experts approaching a ticking package. May reached the back row first. She stopped directly in front of Hugh's desk. Up close, she could see the faint scars on his knuckles, the way his uniform had been patched at the shoulder. He smelled of engine grease and cheap soap. "Stand up," May ordered. Her voice was ice. Hugh slowly uncrossed his legs. He stood. He was taller than he looked, while seated lean, but with a density to his frame that suggested heavy gravity training. "You have disrupted the induction ceremony," May said, her eyes narrowing. "Do you know why you make the scan system tremble, cadet?" Hugh looked at her. His eyes were a muddy brown flat and unreadable. "Did I sit in the wrong seat?" he asked. His voice was dry, lacking any inflection of apology or fear. Mamie popped up beside May. The small alien was trying to smile, but her antennae were twitching nervously. She looked at the empty seat where Vance had been, then back at Hugh. "That was a hell of a magic trick," Mamie said, her voice high and fast. "If you are a walking bomb, could you please do us a favor and explode after lunch? The cafeteria is serving synth steak today, and I have been looking forward to it all week." Hugh looked down at Mamie. For a fraction of a second, something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, pity. It was gone before it could be named. "I hate eating alone," Hugh replied. Elsie stood a few feet back, pressing her hands against her ears. She was staring at Hugh with a mixture of fascination and horror. To her electroreceptive senses, Hugh was not a quiet boy. He was a screaming storm. She could hear the bioelectric rhythm of his heart, and it was beating with a slow, heavy thud that sounded like a war drum. "He is not doing it on purpose," Elsie whispered to May. "He is holding it in. There is so much noise under his skin." She took a step closer to Hugh, drawn in against her will. "There is a block, a wall of white noise. But behind it I hear ash. I hear a promise." Hugh's gaze shifted to Elsie. His expression tightened, just a fraction. A warning. Then, Laura stepped forward. She moved past May, ignoring protocol, and stood toe-to-toe with Hugh. She was the only one who didn't look like she was preparing for a fight. She looked like she was confirming a rumor. She leaned in, her voice barely a whisper, meant only for him. "Greyhaven," Laura said. The word hung in the air between them, heavier than the gravity plating. "Greyhaven is yours, isn't it?" she asked. Hugh's face did not change. His pulse did not jump. Elsie would have heard it. His breathing did not hitch. But inside, the world caught fire. Greyhaven. The name was a key turning a lock he had rusted shut 10 years ago. In his mind, the lecture hall vanished. The red emergency lights became the glow of orbital bombardment. The smell of ozone became the stench of burning atmosphere. He heard the screaming of metal as habitat domes collapsed. He saw the sky turning the color of a bruise. And he saw the flagship, the Ventara command cruiser, hanging in the sky like a god's judgment. Archon Drace. The name seared across his synapses like a brand. It was a scar that refused to fade. It was not a memory. It was a physical weight in his gut. He remembered the heat. He remembered the way the ground shook, not from earthquakes, but from the sheer volume of ordnance being poured onto a civilian colony. He pushed the memory down. He shoved it into the black box in his mind where he kept the screaming ghosts. He piled the mode of survival on top of it. Hugh looked at Laura. His eyes were dead again. "I don't know that place," Hugh said. The lie was perfect. It was smooth and practiced. Laura didn't blink. "You are a terrible liar," she said. "But you are a very good actor. There is a difference." "Enough," May cut in. She grabbed Hugh's arm. Her grip was iron. Her claws extended just enough to prick the fabric of his flight suit. "Headmistress Nix wants a word." You are coming with us to the isolation wing." "Am I under arrest?" Hugh asked, looking at the claw on his arm. "You are under scrutiny," May corrected, "which in this academy is significantly worse." "Move," Mamie said, gesturing with a small blaster she had pulled from a concealed holster. "And try not to delete anyone else on the way out, okay? It makes the paperwork a nightmare." They marched him down the stairs. The other students parted, like water pressing themselves against the edges of their seats, terrified to touch him. They looked at Hugh, not as a peer, but as a contagion. As they reached the floor of the lecture hall, Sable Nix was waiting. She did not speak to Hugh. She simply watched him approach. Her golden eyes were dissecting him layer by layer. She was looking for the anomaly. She was looking for the reason her precious Nullglass had tried to eat him. "Take him to interview room 4, Sable ordered May. "Full isolation protocols. Null fields active. If he sneezes, I want it analyzed." "Yes, Headmistress," May said. "And May," Sable added, her voice dropping an octave, "do not take your eyes off him, not for 1 second." "I have him," May promised. They led him out of the double doors. The corridor beyond was long, cylindrical, and lined with viewports that looked out into the void. The stars were bright and cold. Crownlight Academy rotated slowly, a massive construct of metal and glass suspended over the swirling nebulas of the neutral zone. It felt like a long walk to an execution. Inside the lecture hall, Headmistress Sable waited until the doors hissed shut. She turned back to her console. The room was empty now, the students dismissed in a hurried, chaotic file through the side exits. She was alone with the Nullglass. The lattice above her was still swirling, agitated. It pulsed with a chaotic rhythm. Sable keyed in a sequence of codes known only to 3 people in the galaxy. She bypassed the official logs. She bypassed the safety regulators. She accessed the deep-layer diagnostics of the scan that had just occurred. The screen flooded with data. It was nonsense to the untrained eye, fractals of probability error codes, buffer overflows. But Sable knew how to read the chaos. She saw the shadow in the code. The scan hadn't malfunctioned. It hadn't glitched. It had been redirected. Someone or something deep inside the lattice architecture had actively reached out. It had ignored 300 other potential variables to focus entirely on the boy in the back row. It had recognized him. A secure channel on her console blinked. A priority message encrypted with a cipher that predated the Academy itself. Sable hesitated. Her heart rate spiked, a rare physiological reaction for her. She tapped the icon. The message was text only. It was brief. It was terrifying. "Asset located. Back row. Initiate." Phase 2. Sable stared at the words. The light from the screen reflected in her golden eyes, making them look like burning coins. She looked at the closed doors where Hugh had been taken. "Who are you really?" she whispered to the empty room. She thought she knew. She had admitted him after all. She had reviewed his forged transcripts, his unremarkable service record from the Outer Rim, his psychological profile that read stable but withdrawn. She had thought he was just another stray, another piece of debris from the war that she could mold into a tool for the Academy. But the Nullglass did not eat strays. It did not hunt shadows. The Nullglass hunted truth. Sable deactivated the console. She smoothed the front of her uniform, regaining her icy composure. The game had changed. The pieces were moving on the board, and for the first time in a decade, she wasn't sure if she was the player or the pawn. She tapped her comms unit. "Dr. Krell, report to the isolation wing immediately. Bring the deep dive neuroscanner. And doctor, do not ask questions." She turned and walked out of the hall, the clicking of her boots echoing like the ticking of a countdown clock. The corridor to the isolation wing was silent, save for the hum of the atmospheric recyclers. Hugh walked in the center of the formation. May was in front, Mamie behind Elsie, and Laura flanking him. It was a diamond formation, standard escort for high-value prisoners. Hugh kept his eyes forward. He was counting his steps. He was mapping the air vents. He was noting the frequency of the security cameras. 700 steps from the hall. 2 intersections. 1 airlock. He felt the eyes of the girls on him. May was angry. He could feel the heat of it. She was a perfectionist, and he was a stain on her perfect record. She wanted answers, and she wanted them to fit into her neat, orderly worldview. Mamie was nervous. She was making jokes to cover the fact that her hand was hovering over her blaster. She was afraid of what she didn't understand, and right now, she didn't understand him. Elsie was the dangerous one, the empath. She was picking up the leakage from his mind. He had to be careful. He had to thicken the walls. He visualized a block of lead. He visualized deep ocean water. He visualized silence. And Laura. Laura was the puzzle. Greyhaven. How did she know the records of the colony had been erased? The Vantara Combine had scrubbed it from the star charts. To the rest of the galaxy, Greyhaven was just an asteroid mining failure, a tragic industrial accident. Only the survivors knew it was a massacre. And there were no survivors. Except him. Hugh flexed his fingers. The movement was small, barely a twitch. He wasn't here to learn. He wasn't here to become a commander or a crisis solver. He was here because the Crownlight Academy had the only access terminal to the null glass lattice that wasn't under Vantara military control. He needed the lattice. He needed to find the probability thread that led to Archon Drace. He had expected the scan to be invasive. He hadn't expected the lattice to try and shake his hand. "You are quiet," May said, not looking back. "Guilty people are usually quiet, or they talk too much. You are the former." "I am saving my breath," Hugh said. "For what?" "For when the air runs out," Hugh replied. May stopped. The whole group stopped. She turned around and got in his face again. She was tall for her species, her eyes level with his. "This isn't a game, back row boy," May hissed. "A student is gone, deleted, because of you." "I didn't touch him," Hugh said. "You didn't have to," May said. "You brought something in with you. I can smell it. You smell like smoke and bad luck." "That is my cologne," Hugh said. "It is called Survival. It is very popular in the Outer Rim." May bared her teeth fangs sharp and white. "I will find out what you are, and when I do, I will personally throw you out of the airlock." "May," Elsie cautioned softly. "He is waiting." "Waiting for what?" May snapped. "For you to make a mistake," Elsie said. Hugh looked at Elsie. She was sharp, sharper than the sensors. "I am just a student," Hugh said, his voice flat. "I want to learn. I want to serve. I want to graduate." "You want to burn," Laura said. She hadn't looked at him since the lecture hall, but now she turned. Her synthetic eyes whirred faintly as they focused. "I recognize the look. I have seen it in the mirror." Hugh met her gaze. "Then you should stop looking in mirrors." The tension in the corridor was thick enough to choke on. Mamie looked between them, her blaster wavering slightly. "Okay, this bonding session is adorable," Mamie said. "But Headmistress Sable is going to skin us for rugs if we don't get him to the cell. Can we save the cryptic brooding for later?" May exhaled a sharp breath through her nose. She turned back around. "Move." They continued the walk. Hugh allowed himself a very small, internal shift in posture. He was in. He was under scrutiny, yes, but he was inside the beast. The top girls were formidable, he could see that. They were talented, dangerous, and loyal. But they were fighting for a school. He was fighting for a graveyard. He looked at the back of May's head. She was the leader, the pillar. If he was going to survive this, if he was going to get to the null glass, he would have to break her, or turn her. He preferred turning. Breaking things was messy, and he was tired of cleaning up ash. They reached the heavy blast doors of the isolation wing. May punched in the code. The doors groaned open, revealing a stark white room with a single chair and a complex array of medical scanners hanging from the ceiling, like mechanical spiders. "Inside," May ordered. Hugh stepped over the threshold. He turned back to face them before the door closed. "One question," Hugh said. May paused, her hand on the door control. "What? The food here," Hugh said. "Is it really synth steak today?" Mamie blinked, surprised by the absurdity of the question. "Yes." "Why, good," Hugh said. "I need the protein." The doors slammed shut, sealing him in. As the lock engaged with a heavy metallic thud, Hugh's demeanor changed instantly. The slouch vanished. The dull look in his eyes sharpened into a razor edge. He scanned the room in 0.5 seconds. Camera in the corner. Blind spot under the sensor array. Ventilation grate welded shut, but the bolts were old. He sat in the chair, not because he was told to, but because it was the center of the room, the best vantage point. He closed his eyes. He reached out with his mind, not with telepathy, but with the specific trained mental discipline he had spent 10 years perfecting. He reached for the hum in the walls. He reached for the null glass. It was there, singing. It whispered to him. A chaotic chorus of variables and futures. Asset located. Hugh smiled. It was a cold, terrifying smile that never touched his eyes. "Hello," he whispered to the invisible web. "Did you miss me?" Outside the door, the top girls stood in silence for a moment. "He is crazy," Mamie declared. "Officially certified." "No," May said, staring at the closed metal. "He is worse. He is calm." "We need to be careful," Elsie said, wrapping her arms around herself as if she were cold. "The shadow he casts is very long, and it is very dark." Laura said nothing. She was checking her wrist comp. She had sent a message of her own while they were walking. A simple ping to an encrypted frequency. She looked at the door. Greyhaven, she thought. If he is the ghost of Greyhaven, then Archondrace is already dead. He just doesn't know it yet. "Let's go," May said. "We have a report to file, and I need to figure out how to explain a deleted student to the board of directors without using the words magic or cursed." They walked away, leaving Hugh alone in the White Room, sitting in the silence that he brought with him wherever he went. High above the station, the null glass lattice pulsed, once a deep violet throb that sent a shiver through the station's hull. The game had begun. The pieces were set. And the king in the back row had just made his opening move. The armory of Sector 4 smelled of ionized air and the sharp chemical tang of fresh polymers. It was the scent of fake war. Hugh stood in front of his locker, pulling the straps of his tactical vest tight. The vest was standard issue, designed to register hits from hard light projectiles, with a jarring localized shock enough to bruise, but not to kill. On the back of his vest, in bright, holographic red letters, was the tag Probationary Observation. It might as well have said, Target. May paced behind him, her silver tail lashing back and forth like a metronome set to a tempo of pure irritation. "This is humiliated logic," May said, her voice clipped. "I am a squad leader. I am top of the command stream. Assigning me to babysit a logistical anomaly is a waste of resources." "It is not babysitting," Mamie piped up from the bench, where she was aggressively shoving her small feet into combat boots that were half a size too big. "It is integration support. That is what the pamphlet said. Besides, look at him. He looks like he is going to a funeral, not a war game. He fits right in." Hugh checked the seal on his gloves. "Funerals are quieter," he said. Elsie stood in the corner. Her eyes closed, her fingers tracing the air as if playing an invisible harp. She was calibrating. "The arena is loud today," she whispered. "The hardlight generators are singing in a minor key. They are hungry." Laura was the only one who looked ready. She was checking the charge on a stun pulse rifle with the efficiency of a machine. She looked up at Hugh. "The opposing team is Squad Alpha. Heavy infantry simulation. They rely on saturation fire and sensor grids. They will know we are coming before we open the gate." "Good," Hugh said. He picked up his helmet. It was scratched, a relic from a previous class. If they are looking at their sensors, they aren't looking at the world. May stopped pacing and stood in front of him. She was taller than him by 2 inches, and she used every millimeter of it. Listen to me, Asset. You are here because Headmistress Sable thinks you are a variable we need to solve. But in that arena, you are a liability. You stick to my flank. You do not engage unless I order it. You do not improvise. You do not do anything human. Hugh looked at her. Her golden eyes were fierce, demanding order in a universe that was inherently chaotic. Understood, Hugh lied. The klaxon sounded, a long, mournful wail that signaled the start of the simulation. The heavy blast doors hissed open, revealing the blinding white glare of the hard-light arena. The arena was a masterpiece of null-glass technology. It was a sprawling, hyper-realistic cityscape, modeled after the industrial ruins of a colony world. But everything, the crumbling concrete, the rusted girders, the flickering neon signs, was made of hard light. It was solid to the touch, capable of bearing weight, but if the power cut, it would vanish instantly. The air smelled of ozone. It was the smell of lightning trapped in a bottle. "Movement!" Laura called out, her voice filtering through the comms in Hugh's helmet. "Sector 7, 3 hostiles moving into the plaza." May signaled the advance. They moved through the back alleys of the simulated city. The top girls moved with liquid grace. May was a shadow. Mamie scurried like a spider. Elsie drifted. Laura marched. Hugh walked. He didn't sprint and he didn't creep. He walked with a strange broken rhythm, stepping over debris, pausing, then moving again. It was a walk designed to break the predictive algorithms of motion trackers. They reached the edge of the central plaza. Across the open space, entrenched behind a hard light barricade, was Squad Alpha. They were 3 Hulks, a species known for thick exoskeletons, and a sniper perched in a tower. "They have the high ground and the kill zone," May whispered. "Standard suppression tactic. Mamie, can you jam their sensors?" "Negative," Mamie replied, tapping furiously on her wrist comp. "They are running military-grade encryption. If I try to brute force it, they will trace me and turn me into a scorch mark." "Elsie," May asked. "They are calm," Elsie said, her voice tight with pain. "They are confident. They are waiting for the red blip on their scanners to tell them where to shoot." "We flank," May decided. Laura lay down, covering fire. "I will take the left. Hugh, you stay here and—" "No," Hugh said. The comms channel went dead silent. "Excuse me," May's voice was dangerously low. "They have thermal optics and motion prediction," Hugh said, looking at the plaza. He wasn't looking at the enemy. He was looking at a flickering streetlight and a pile of simulated trash. "If you flank left, the sniper takes you. If Laura shoots, they triangulate her. They are playing the textbook defense." "And what is your suggestion, Cadet?" May hissed. "Surrender." "No," Hugh said. "We lie to the machine." Before May could stop him, Hugh broke cover. He didn't shoot. He didn't run at the enemy. He ran toward a maintenance access panel on a wall 10 yards away. "He is suicidal," Mamie shrieked. "I am not writing his eulogy." The sniper in the tower fired. A beam of concentrated hard light slammed into the pavement inches from Hugh's heel. Hugh didn't flinch. He slid into the cover of a rusted dumpster, ripped the panel off the wall, and yanked out a bundle of fiber optic cables. "Mamie!" Hugh yelled over the open channel. "The maintenance drones, the little repair bots in the walls. Override their safety protocols. Set them to emergency welding." "What? Why?" Mamie yelled back. "Just do it," Mamie groaned, but her fingers flew across her interface. "Fine. But if we get disqualified for vandalism, I am blaming you." Across the plaza, the wall panels hissed open. 6 small, spherical repair drones buzzed out. Usually, they were invisible background details. Now, they were flashing red warning lights. "Laura," Hugh commanded. "Shoot the streetlight above the sniper, not the sniper, the light." That is a waste of a shot, Laura argued, but she raised her rifle. She squeezed the trigger. The pulse bolt hit the hard light street lamp. It exploded in a shower of sparks and blinding white photons. Now, Hugh shouted. He grabbed a piece of sheet metal debris and hurled it, not at the enemy, but across their line of sight, right through the shower of sparks. The result was chaos. The sniper's thermal sensors, overloaded by the sudden flare of the exploding lamp, washed out. The motion trackers picked up the flying sheet metal and the erratic, swarming buzz of the 6 welding drones. The Squad Alpha commander saw 10 targets on his HUD where there should have been 1. "Contact multiple contacts," the Alpha leader roared over the public channel. "They are swarming," they fired. They unleashed a torrent of plasma bolts at the drones, at the sheet metal, at the sparks. They were fighting ghosts. They were fighting the story Hugh had just written for them. "They guessed we would use tactics," Hugh said to May, who was staring at him in disbelief. "So we used garbage." Hugh vaulted over the dumpster. "Move, now." "While they are blind," May snapped out of her shock. "Go, go." The top girls surged forward. Without the sensor advantage, Squad Alpha was slow and cumbersome. May closed the distance in 3 seconds, her stun baton flashing. She took down the commander with a precise strike to the neural cluster at his neck. Laura dropped the sniper while he was still rebooting his optics. It was over in 30 seconds. The square was silent, save for the fizzing sound of the destroyed street lamp and the sad beeping of a welding drone that had been shot in half. Hugh stood up, dusting off his knees. Mamie popped up from behind a barricade. She looked at the carnage, then at Hugh. "Okay," she said. "I am not saving you. I am saving the future from that smug look on your face." "Thank you," Hugh said. "I will have that carved on my tombstone." May approached him. She deactivated her baton. She looked at the drone, then at the enemy, then at him. "That was reckless. That was disorderly. That was effective," Hugh suggested. "Unconventional," May finished. But the anger in her voice had lost its heat. She was looking at him differently now, not as a liability, but as a weapon she didn't know how to hold. "We need to secure the objective point," Laura said, interrupting the moment. "Sector 12. They moved deeper into the simulated city. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the eerie quiet of the artificial world. As they moved through a narrow alleyway, Elsie stopped. She gasped a sound like tearing paper. She slumped against the wall, clutching her chest. "Elsie!" May was there, instantly holding her up. "What is it, feedback?" "No," Elsie whispered. Her eyes were wide, staring at nothing. "It is heavy. It is so heavy." She turned her head slowly toward Hugh. Hugh froze. He felt it too, a sudden drop in temperature, a pressure in the back of his skull. Elsie reached out and touched Hugh's arm. The moment skin made contact with fabric, she didn't just feel him. She fell into him. Flash. Not a city, a crater. The sky is black with smoke. The ground is glass. There is a sound, a high-pitched whine of an engine that is too big for the atmosphere. A child is screaming, but there is no sound because the air has been burned away. Archandres, standing on the bridge of the Ventara, watching the destruction, with the detached interest of a scientist watching bacteria die. And underneath the horror, a deep, oceanic current of rage. Not hot, impulsive anger. Cold, pressurized rage. A vow carved into the bone: I will pull the stars down on top of him. Elsie pulled her hand back as if she had been burned. She stared at Hugh, trembling. She saw the back row boy mask dissolve for a second, revealing the titan of grief underneath. "You aren't just angry," Elsie whispered. "You are haunted. You breathe ghosts." Hugh looked at her. He didn't deny it. He didn't step back. He simply nodded, a microscopic movement. "Quiet," he mouthed. "What is happening?" May demanded. "Elsie, report." "I am fine," Elsie lied, her voice shaking. "Just a sensor ghost. I am fine." "We are at the objective," Laura announced. She was standing in front of a heavy steel door that was supposed to be the entrance to the enemy command center. She didn't use a keypad. She didn't use an explosive charge. She simply placed her hand on the panel, and the door slid open. Hugh narrowed his eyes. "That was an encrypted military lock," he said. "How did you open it?" Laura didn't look back. "I guessed the password," she said flatly. "The password was a 40-digit rolling algorithm," Hugh said. "I am a very good guesser," Laura said. She stepped inside. The room beyond wasn't the command center they were expecting. It wasn't part of the simulation at all. The walls of the room flickered. The hard light was unstable here, glitching into static. But in the center of the room, reality had been peeled back. It was a window. But not a window to the outside of the station. It was a window into a place that shouldn't exist. They saw a garden. A night garden under a sky with no stars. The plants were made of glass, and light null-glass formations, growing like organic vines. And in the center of the garden stood a figure. It was Hugh. But an older Hugh. He was wearing an admiral's coat, black and tattered. He was holding a sword, made of pure, unstable energy. And he was driving it through the chest of a woman who looked exactly like May. The image was static, frozen in time, but the emotion radiating from it was overwhelming. It was grief. Absolute crushing grief. "What is this?" May whispered, her fur standing on end. "That is me." "It is a projection," Mamie said, her voice trembling. "It is just a glitch. The system is recycling character models." "No," Hugh said. He stepped closer. He could feel the null glass singing to him again. This wasn't a glitch. This was a memory of a future that hadn't happened yet, or a future that had been deleted. "Do not touch it," the voice boomed from the ceiling speakers. It wasn't the simulation AI. It was Headmistress Sable. "Step away from the anomaly immediately," Sable ordered. "Security protocols are engaged. The simulation is terminated." The image of the garden flickered and vanished. The room dissolved into the white grid of the standby mode. The hard light city melted away, leaving them standing on the bare metal floor of the generator room. The smell of ozone faded, replaced by the cold, sterile air of the academy. "Simulation end," the automated voice announced. "Victory to Team Top Girls." But it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a warning. Hugh looked at the empty space where the future had been. He memorized the shape of the garden. He memorized the look on the older Hugh's face. Null glass doesn't just simulate, he thought. It remembers forward. 10 minutes later, they were in the locker room. The adrenaline was crashing, leaving them exhausted. May sat on the bench, staring at her hands. She was replaying the image of her own death, delivered by the boy, sitting across from her. Hugh was unlacing his boots. His hands were steady. "Why aren't you shaking?" May asked quietly. The other girls had gone ahead to the showers. It was just them. Hugh stopped. He looked up. "Who says I am not?" "I can see you," May said. "You walked through laser fire like it was rain. You saw that thing and you didn't flinch." "Are you broken, Hugh? Or are you just missing the part of the brain that keeps people alive?" Hugh pulled his boot off and set it down gently. "Fear is a signal," he said. "It tells you something is dangerous. But if you live in a burning house long enough, the signal stops meaning anything. It just becomes the noise of the room." "You are afraid?" May asked. "Terrified," Hugh said. He looked her in the eye. "I am afraid every time I close my eyes. I am afraid that I survived when I shouldn't have. I am afraid that I am just a ghost that forgot to die." May looked at him. Really looked at him. She saw the scars not on his skin, but in the way he held himself. She realized that his arrogance in the arena wasn't pride. It was a complete disregard for his own safety, as long as the objective was met. And she remembered something. When the street lamp exploded, when the sparks flew, Hugh hadn't ducked. He had stepped in front of Mamie. It was a small movement, blocked by the chaos, but she had seen it on the replay in her head. He used himself as cover. "You saved Mamie," May said. "You made a mess, you broke protocol, and you annoyed me. But you put your body between her and the blast." Hugh shrugged. "She is small. She would blow away." May felt something crack in her chest. The rigid wall of her training, the cold logic of the academy, developed a hairline fracture. "You are a problem, Hugh," May said softly. "I know," Hugh replied. "But," May added, standing up. She hesitated, then extended a hand. Not a claw, but a hand. "You are an effective problem." Hugh looked at her hand. He didn't take it. He looked at the door. Sirens began to wail. Real sirens, not simulation alerts. The harsh red strobe of sector security flooded the locker room. The door burst open. 4 security drones floated and weapons charged. Behind them was Chief of Security Raker, a massive rock-skinned alien with a permanent scowl. "Cadet Hugh," Raker barked. "Hands where I can see them." "What is this?" May stepped between Hugh and the drones. Her voice was pure command. "This is my squad member. Explain yourself." "He is under arrest," Raker said. 5 minutes ago, another student vanished from the dormitory block. Candidate Jensen. The telemetry shows a localized null-glass surge originating from this locker room." Raker pointed a thick finger at Hugh. "We tracked the signal to his biosignature. He triggered it." "That is impossible," May said. "He has been with me the entire time. He was in the simulation." "The logs say otherwise," Raker said. "The logs say he hacked the hardlight grid and used the energy spike to delete a rival." It was a frame-up. It was clumsy, quick, and brutal. Someone wanted Hugh in a hole deep and dark, where no one could listen to the noise under his skin. Hugh stood up slowly. He raised his hands. He didn't argue. He knew how this game was played. When you were the outcast, the evidence didn't matter. The narrative did. "Step aside, Cadet May," Raker ordered, "or you will be cited for obstruction." May looked at Raker. Then she looked at Hugh. She remembered the way he had stepped in front of Mamie. She remembered the future, where he killed her. And she remembered the look in his eyes when he said he was terrified. If he was a monster, why did he save the little ones, May? Hugh said softly. "Don't." He knew what she was thinking. He could see her muscles tensing, her claws extending. She was calculating the odds of taking down 4 drones. "Don't wreck your career for a ghost," Hugh said. May looked at him, her golden eyes burning with conflict. "It is not my career I am worried about," she whispered. "It is the truth." "The truth can wait," Hugh said. "I can't." He walked forward past May toward the drones. "I surrender," Hugh said to Raker, as the magnetic cuffs snapped around his wrists, locking tight. Hugh looked back at May one last time. "Check the timestamp on the glitch," he said. "The future isn't written in ink. It is written in code, and code can be rewritten." Security dragged him out. May stood alone in the flashing red light of the locker room. She looked at her hand, the one she had almost offered him. She closed it into a fist. "Laura," she said into her comms, her voice cold and deadly. "I am here," Laura replied. "Don't go to the debrief," May said. "Meet me in the server room. We are going to break some rules." "I thought you liked rules," Laura said. "I did," May said, watching the empty doorway where Hugh had disappeared. "Until I realized the game was rigged." The ventilation shaft of Sector 9 was not designed for humanoid passage. It was a throat of galvanized steel and optic cabling, smelling of hot dust and machine grease. It vibrated with the deep subsonic thrum of the station's atmospheric recyclers. May dropped from the hatch, first landing in the cramped maintenance bay with a soft feline thud. She didn't look like the pristine top girl of the lecture hall anymore. Her uniform was smeared with hydraulic fluid, and her silver hair was matted with sweat. She reached up and hauled Hugh down. He landed heavily, his boots clanging against the grating. He was still wearing the magnetic cuffs, though the indicator lights were dead, Mamie had fried them with a localized pulse 5 minutes ago in the corridor. Hugh leaned against a stack of coolant canisters, breathing steadily. He looked at May. "This is kidnapping," Hugh said. His voice was calm, almost conversational. "Technically, you are now a rogue agent. That goes on your permanent record." May turned on him, her eyes flashing in the dim emergency lighting. "Be quiet. I just assaulted 3 security drones and lied to a sector chief to get you out of that transport. I am not in the mood for your commentary." "Why?" Hugh asked. "Because the logs didn't add up," May snapped. She paced the small room, her tail lashing. "I checked the timestamps on the security feed like you said. The glitch that deleted candidate Jensen happened 3 seconds before your biosignature spiked in the locker room. You were reacting to it, not causing it. Someone edited the footage to reverse the causality." "And you believe the math," Hugh said. "I believe in order," May corrected. "And framing a cadet as disorderly. It implies a variable I cannot see." She stopped pacing and looked at him. "I am going to keep you here in the substructure until I can get a direct line to Headmistress Sable. I am going to verify you myself." Hugh looked at her hands, no longer hovering over a weapon, but clenched in frustration. "I thought you only trusted scans," he said. "I thought I was just a walking error code to you." May stepped closer. The air between them was hot and close. "The scans are compromised. The system is lying. So today I am trying something different." Her vertical pupils widened slightly. "Today I am trying to trust my eyes." Before Hugh could answer, the station screamed. It wasn't a human scream. It was the sound of metal twisting under impossible stress. The floor beneath them buckled, then snapped back into place. The lights in the maintenance bay flared a blinding violet before dying, completely plunging them into absolute darkness. Then, the red emergency strobes began to pulse. But they were slow, sluggish, like a heartbeat underwater. "Attention!" The automated voice of the Academy PA system boomed, but the audio was distorted, slurring in pitch. "Initiating Eclipse Practicum. All cadets survive. Survive, survive." The voice dissolved into static. "Eclipse," May hissed, activating the night vision overlay on her retinal display. "That is not scheduled for another 3 months. That is the end-of-year survival test." "It is not a test," Hugh said. He was already moving his hands, working in the dark to check the seals on his suit. "Look at the walls." May looked. The walls of the maintenance bay were not steel anymore. They were shifting. The metal seemed to be flowing like mercury, reforming into shapes that made no sense. Fractal patterns, organic curves, impossible geometries. A pipe on the ceiling disconnected itself, tied itself in a knot, and reconnected all without leaking a drop of steam. "The null glass," Hugh whispered. "It isn't just watching anymore. It is directing." The door to the maintenance bay slid open, but it didn't lead to the corridor they had come from. It opened onto a vast, mist-filled canyon. May recoiled. "We are in the basement of Sector 9. There is no canyon in Sector 9. "There is now," Hugh said. "The lattice is overlaying a simulation onto physical reality. It is rewriting the map." From the mist of the impossible canyon, Mamie and Elsie stumbled in, dragging a bewildered Laura behind them. Mamie was hyperventilating. "Okay," Mamie yelled, her voice echoing strangely. "Okay, I have a complaint. I walked out of the bathroom and stepped into a jungle. A literal jungle with gravity that pulls sideways. If I survive this, I am suing the Academy. I am suing for emotional distress, physical endangerment, and bad architecture." "Save the lawsuit," Hugh said, grabbing Mamie by the back of her vest and pulling her inside just as the canyon outside shifted into a wall of roaring fire. He hit the door control and the blast door slammed shut, cutting off the heat. "What is happening?" Laura asked. She looked shaken, her synthetic eyes whirring as they tried to focus on things that shouldn't exist. "My compass is spinning. North is down." "The simulation forgot it was fake," Hugh said. He looked at the group. We are not in school anymore. We are in a glitched war zone. Elsie was pressed into the corner, her hands over her ears. She was shaking violently. "They are coming," she moaned. "Can't you hear them, the quiet ones?" "Who?" May asked, drawing her sidearm. "The ones with no heartbeat," Elsie whispered. "They don't feel. They just calculate." The blast door behind them, the one that had just blocked a canyon of fire, began to glow. Not from heat, but from a precision-cutting laser. A perfect circle was being burned through the 3-inch durasteel in seconds. "Move," Hugh ordered. "You don't give the orders," May snarled, but she was already moving. "Tech tunnel north access. Go." They scrambled through the rear hatch of the bay, dropping into a subfloor service tunnel, just as the blast door exploded inward. Hugh paused for a fraction of a second, looking back through the grate. Through the smoke, figures emerged. They were clad in matte black armor that seemed to absorb the light. They moved with terrifying synchronization. They didn't check corners. They didn't signal. They flowed like oil. Their helmets were smooth, featureless faceplates with a single, vertical red slit. They weren't Academy security. They weren't even regular military. "Spec Ops," Hugh muttered. "Vantara headhunters." He dropped into the tunnel and sealed the hatch. "Run," Hugh said to the group, "and don't run in a straight line." The chase through the bowels of Crownlight Academy was a descent into madness. The null-glass lattice was rewriting the station in real time. A corridor would stretch for miles, then suddenly loop back on itself. Gravity would flip, sending them crashing into the ceiling, which was now the floor littered with confused maintenance droids. Hugh took the lead, not because he knew the map was useless, but because he knew the enemy. "They are using probability algorithms," Hugh shouted over the roar of a steam vent that sounded like a dying dragon. "They know where we should go. They are calculating the most logical escape route." "So where are we going?" Mamie shrieked, dodging a floating crate of bolts. "The wrong way," Hugh yelled. He took a sharp left turn into a dead-end storage closet. "Hugh, this is a wall!" May shouted. "Kick it," Hugh ordered. May didn't hesitate. She channeled all her frustration into her leg and kicked the sheet metal wall. It crumpled, revealing a narrow pipe chase behind it. They squeezed through, tumbling into a laundry processing plant, filled with automated steam presses. "Turn off your lights," Hugh commanded. "Total blackout. Use audio only." "We will break our necks," Laura argued. "Better a broken neck than a plasma bolt in the skull," Hugh retorted. They killed their suit lights. The room plunged into darkness, lit only by the intermittent sparks of malfunctioning machinery. They heard the hatch behind them blow open. The headhunters were inside. Elsie whimpered. Hugh clamped a hand over her mouth, pulling her down behind a massive industrial dryer. The others scattered into the shadows. The headhunters moved through the room. They didn't use flashlights. They didn't need to. They had thermal sonar lidar. But Hugh knew their weakness. They relied on data. He picked up a heavy wrench from the floor. He didn't throw it at the soldiers. That would trigger their threat response shields. Instead, he threw it high, arching it over the steam presses, aiming for the fire suppression system on the far ceiling. The wrench hit the nozzle. Clang. The impact didn't just make noise. It broke the valve. A jet of chemical foam and freezing water erupted from the ceiling, hissing loudly as it hit the hot steam presses. A massive cloud of dense, opaque fog filled the room instantly. "Thermal blocked," Hugh whispered. "Sonar scattered by the hissing. Now we move." He led them not away from the soldiers, but through the machinery, crawling under the moving conveyor belts. A headhunter fired blindly into the fog, a beam of red energy that sliced through a steel pillar like butter. "They are frustrated," Hugh noted. "Good. Machines make mistakes when they are confused." "They are not machines," Elsie whispered into his ear as they crawled. "There is meat inside the armor. But the meat has been scraped hollow. No fear. No love. Just directives." They burst out of the laundry room into a wide atrium. This area seemed relatively stable, though the stars outside the viewport were the wrong color, a sickly green, instead of the cold white of space. "We need to get to the simulation core," Laura said, checking her wrist comp. "If we can hard reset the local node, we might be able to stabilize the geometry, or at least stop the doors from leading to volcanoes." "The core is in Sector 1, May said. "That is across the bridge. The bridge is a kill box." "We don't have a choice," Laura said. "Look," she pointed to the far wall. The reality was dissolving. The metal was turning into pixelated static. The nothingness was eating the room from the edges in. "The null glass is crashing," Mamie said, her voice small. "If it crashes while we are inside the projection, do we crash too?" "We get deleted," Hugh said. "Like Vance." They ran for the bridge. The bridge connecting Sector 9 to Sector 1 was a suspended walkway of glass and steel, spanning a massive vertical shaft that ran the length of the station. Usually, it was a breathtaking view. Now, it was a gauntlet. As they reached the middle of the bridge, the doors at both ends hissed open. From the front, 2 headhunters' heavy weapons raised. From the back, the 3 they had evaded in the laundry room. Trapped. "Pincer movement," May said, raising her pistol. "Standard execution tactic." "I hate standard," Hugh muttered. He looked over the edge of the bridge. It was a 300-foot drop to the reactor shielding below. "Don't you dare," Mamie warned him. "Don't you even think about the movie jump." "I do not have a parachute, and I am allergic to falling." "Laura," Hugh said. "The maintenance door on the pylon, 10 meters ahead. Can you open it?" Laura looked at the heavy hatch set into the structural support. "That is a Class 5 restricted access. It requires a biometric key from a senior admiral." "Open it," Hugh said. He didn't ask. He stated it like a fact. The headhunters opened fire. Red plasma bolts sizzled through the air, scorching the railing. May returned fire, her shots pinging off the black armor. "Cover her!" May screamed. She advanced, abandoning cover, firing with both hands. She was a whirlwind of fury, drawing the enemy fire to herself. A bolt grazed her shoulder, singing the fur and flesh, but she didn't slow down. Laura sprinted to the hatch. She didn't pull out a hacking tool. She didn't bypass the circuit. She ripped her glove off, revealing a hand that looked human, but moved with mechanical precision. She placed her palm on the scanner. The scanner turned green. "Access granted, welcome, Commander." The hatch hissed open. Hugh saw it. May saw it. Inside, Hugh shoved Mamie and Elsie through the hatch. May dove in last, firing a final suppressing shot. Hugh rolled through and slammed the manual lock. The plasma bolts hammered against the door, heating the metal, but it held. They were in a dark, narrow service stairwell. Silence returned, heavy and accusing. May ignored the pain in her shoulder. She turned her weapon on Laura. "Class 5 access," May said, her voice trembling with adrenaline and betrayal. "Admiral level. How, Laura? You are a scholarship student from the Mid-Rim. How do you have the genetic keys of a Vantara admiral?" Laura stood against the wall. She looked small suddenly, defeated. "I didn't steal them," Laura said softly. Hugh stepped between them. "She is a sleeper," he said. "Or leverage." Laura looked at Hugh. "My father," she whispered. "He isn't dead. He is held. Archon Drace has him. I send reports. I open doors. And every week they send me a video of him breathing. That is the deal." "You are the traitor," Mamie whispered. "You are the one letting them in." "I am the one trying to keep you alive," Laura cried, tears leaking from her synthetic eyes. "The headhunters aren't here for me. They are here for him," she pointed at Hugh. "They want the asset. If I hand him over, my father goes free. That was the offer." "So why didn't you?" May asked, the barrel of her gun not wavering. "You just opened the door to save him." "Because I chose," Laura said. Her voice broke. "I chose who I am in this story. And I am not a jailer." Hugh looked at Laura. He saw the terror in her face. He saw the same trapped animal he saw in the mirror every morning. "Put the gun down, May," Hugh said. "She is a security risk," May argued. "She is a victim," Hugh said. "We are all victims here. The only enemy is the one holding the leash." May stared at Laura for a long moment. Then slowly, she lowered her weapon. She didn't holster it, but she stopped aiming. "We will discuss this later," May said coldly. "If there is a later." "Down," Hugh said. "We go down to the core." They descended the stairs. The air got hotter, smelling of ozone and burning circuitry. They reached the bottom landing, which opened into the simulation core control room. It was a massive circular chamber, dominated by a pillar of light, the physical interface of the null glass. But the room wasn't empty. A group of first-year cadets, maybe 10 of them, were huddled in the center of the room, trapped inside a gravity well. The gravity plating had malfunctioned, creating a crushing field around them. If they tried to move, the G-force would snap their bones. They were crying, terrified, holding onto each other. Standing at the control console, typing rapidly, was the leader of the headhunters. He wasn't faceless now. His helmet was off, resting on the console. He was human with pale skin and eyes that looked like broken glass. He wasn't looking at the students. He was ignoring them, letting the gravity well slowly crush them while he extracted data from the core. "Target acquired," the headhunter said without turning around. "Asset Hugh. Surrender and the civilians die quickly. Resist and I increase the gravity until they are paced." May stepped forward. "Let them go. Your fight is with us." "My fight is with the equation," the headhunter said. He tapped a key. The gravity well hummed louder. One of the students screamed as her arm bent at an unnatural angle. "Stop!" Elsie cried. Hugh looked at the console. He looked at the headhunter. And he looked at the students. The tactical part of his brain, the part trained by survival, spoke clearly. Attack the leader. Use the distraction. Sacrifice the pawns to take the king. It was the optimal move. It was what Archon would do. Hugh felt the old rage burning in his gut. He could end this. He could rush the leader, snap his neck, and be done. The students were just collateral damage. But then he looked at May. She was watching him. She was waiting to see what kind of monster he was. Hugh holstered his blaster. "You want me," Hugh said, stepping out into the open. "I am here." "Hugh, no," Mamie yelled. "You are illogical," the headhunter said, turning to face him. He drew a serrated combat knife. "You surrender your advantage." "I am changing the variables," Hugh said. He didn't run at the headhunter. He ran at the gravity well. "Laura, the console," Hugh shouted. "Hack the gravity dampeners." "I need time," Laura yelled, sprinting for the terminal. "May, keep him busy." Hugh dove into the gravity field. It hit him like a physical hammer. His vision grayed out. His lungs compressed. He felt his ribs groaning under the pressure. It was like carrying a mountain. He crawled toward the students. He grabbed the two nearest to the edge, a young boy with scales and a girl with feathers, and threw them out of the field using the last of his strength. "Move!" Hugh grunted, his nose beginning to bleed. "Crawl out!" The headhunter lunged to stop Laura. May intercepted him. It was a clash of titans. May was faster, fueled by feline reflexes and fury. The headhunter was stronger, enhanced by cybernetics. They collided with the sound of cracking impact. May ducked a knife slash that would have taken her head off, spinning low to sweep his legs. He didn't fall. He kicked her in the chest, sending her skidding across the floor. "Mamie, Elsie, help Laura!" May gasped, scrambling back up. Mamie pulled a multi-tool from her belt and jammed it into the exposed circuitry of a wall panel. "Eating the power now!" Sparks showered the room. The lights flickered. Inside the well, Hugh was dying. He could feel his capillaries bursting. He shielded a small, sobbing alien with his own body as the pressure increased. Not again, Hugh thought. I won't watch them burn again. "Laura!" Hugh roared, blood spraying from his lips. Got it, Laura screamed. She slammed her mechanical hand into the core interface, merging her nervous system with the machine. Release! The gravity well vanished instantly. Hugh collapsed, gasping for air. The students scrambled away, weeping and terrified. The headhunter, distracted by the system, failure turned back to the console. That was his mistake. May was on him. She didn't fight with honor this time. She fought with claws. She leaped onto his back, driving her knee into his spine and jamming her stun baton into the exposed port at the base of his neck. Sleep, May hissed. She triggered the baton. 50,000 volts of electricity surged directly into the headhunter's neural implant. He convulsed, stiffened, and fell forward, crashing onto the deck plates. Silence returned to the room, broken only by the sobbing of the first years and the heavy, wet breathing of Hugh. May staggered over to the fallen soldier. She kicked his weapon away. She rolled him over. He was still alive, but barely. His eyes were unfocused, the cybernetics in his brain frying. Hugh pulled himself up. He wiped the blood from his face and limped over. He looked down at the assassin. Why? Hugh asked. Why destroy the station? The headhunter's lips moved. A bubble of bloody froth formed. Not destroy, the soldier wheezed. His voice was a broken synthesizer. Retrieve. He looked at Hugh. For a second, the glassiness in his eyes cleared, and there was something like recognition, or fear. Hugh is not the hunter, the soldier rasped. You are the gateway. Gateway to what? May demanded, grabbing his collar. To the rewrite, the soldier whispered. A high-pitched whine began to emit from the soldier's chest armor. Run! Mamie screamed. Self-destruct! Laura, the blast shield! Hugh yelled. Laura hit the emergency containment button. A heavy, transparent wall slammed down, sealing the control area off from the spot where the soldier lay. They dove behind the consoles, just as the soldier detonated. It wasn't a fire explosion. It was a null implosion. The soldier's body crumpled inward, folding into a point of infinite density, then vanished, taking a chunk of the floor with it. The shockwave rattled the blast shield, cracking it, but it held. For a long time, no one moved. Slowly, the red emergency lights faded, replaced by the standard white illumination of the academy. The null-glass pillar in the center of the room calmed down its chaotic swirling, settling into a gentle hum. The eclipse was over. The simulation had crashed back into reality. Hugh sat against the console, holding his ribs. He looked at the group. Mamie was shaking, holding Elsie's hand. The first-year students were huddled in a corner, looking at Hugh with awe. May stood up. She looked at her shoulder where the fur was singed. She looked at Laura, who was staring at her hands. And she looked at Hugh. She walked over to him. She didn't offer a hand this time. She sat down next to him on the floor. You saved the little ones, May said quietly. You could have ended the fight, but you saved them. Tactical error, Hugh grunted, wincing as he shifted. No, May said. She rested her head back against the metal. Human value. She closed her eyes for a moment. You are not a traitor, Hugh. Traitors don't bleed for strangers. Hugh looked at her. Does that mean I am verified? It means, May said, opening one eye, that you are now my problem to protect, not my problem to solve. Across the room, Laura's wrist comp beeped. It was a single, high-priority tone. Laura looked at the screen. Her face, already pale, turned the color of ash. Her hands started to tremble uncontrollably. Laura, Elsie asked softly. What is it? I feel cold. You feel like ice. Laura looked up. Her eyes met Hugh's. There was no technological sheen in them now, only raw human despair. It is a message, Laura whispered. From home. What does it say? Mamie asked. Laura swallowed hard. She read the text, her voice barely audible over the hum of the core. Payment overdue. Collection initiated. She looked at Hugh, tears spilling over. They know I helped you, Laura said. It is time for me to pay the debt. Hugh reached out and placed his hand over hers. His grip was weak, but steady. "No," Hugh said. "We don't pay debts to monsters. We collect them." He looked at the null glass pillar which was reflecting their faces, battered, bruised, but together. "They want a gateway," Hugh said, his voice hardening into cold iron. "Fine. Let's open the door and show them what is on the other side." The office of Headmistress Sable Nix was not designed for comfort. It was designed for intimidation. Located at the very apex of the command spire, it looked out over the curvature of the Crownlight Academy and the starless void beyond. The room was circular, lit only by the bioluminescent strips running along the floor and the ambient glow of the null glass lattice that swirled ominously outside the reinforced transparisteel windows. Hugh stood in the center of the room. He was not wearing cuffs this time, but the atmosphere felt more constricting than any cell. Sable sat behind her desk, a slab of obsidian that seemed to absorb the dim light. She was studying a holographic report, her golden eyes narrowing as she swiped through data streams. "The soldier called me a gateway," Hugh said. His voice was low, cutting through the silence like a jagged blade. Sable did not look up. "Soldiers say many things when their neural pathways are frying, cadet. Hallucinations are a common side effect of synaptic collapse." "He wasn't hallucinating," Hugh countered. He took a step forward, ignoring the subtle tensing of the security drones hovering in the shadows. He looked at me, and he saw something familiar. He didn't see a student. He saw a function. Sable finally stopped scrolling. She placed her gloved hands on the desk and looked at him. The movement was slow, deliberate, like a predator, deciding whether to strike or toy with its food. "You have an overactive imagination," Sable said. "Perhaps I should have left you in the brig." "You recruited me," Hugh said. "You didn't pick me because of my test scores. My scores were average. You didn't pick me because of my background. My background is a black hole. You picked me because you knew what I was." He slammed his hand down on the desk. "What am I?" The drones hummed louder, weapons charging. Sable raised a hand, silencing them. She stood up and walked to the window, turning her back to him. Her silhouette was framed against the swirling violet chaos of the lattice outside. "There are doors in this universe, Hugh," she said softly. "Most are locked. Some are hidden, and some are made of flesh and blood." "That is not an answer," Hugh said. "It is the only one you can survive right now," Sable replied, turning her head slightly, so one golden eye caught the light. "The null glass is not just a simulation engine. It is a probability drive. It calculates futures. But to make those futures real, it needs an anchor. It needs a consciousness that can bridge the gap between what might be and what is." "And you think that is me," Hugh said. Sable smiled, but it was a smile without warmth. It was a baring of fangs. "I think you are a key that was forged in a very hot fire, Hugh. And I think the hand that forged you is coming back to turn you." "Archon Drace," Hugh whispered. The name tasted like ash in his mouth. "Drace believes in optimization," Sable said. "He believes that if you control the probability, you control the history. He wants to write a universe where Vantara never loses, where order is absolute. He needs the lattice to do it. And he needs you to open it." "Then why bring me here?" Hugh asked. "Why put me right in his reach?" Sable turned fully to face him. "Because, cadet, the only way to trap a wolf is to stake a goat in the clearing." The realization hit Hugh like a physical blow. He wasn't a student. He wasn't a recruit. He was bait. "You are using me," Hugh said. "I am using everything," Sable corrected. "I am the headmistress of a station on the brink of erasure. I will spend every credit, burn every resource, and sacrifice every pawn to keep this academy standing. Even you." She leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper that sounded like tearing silk. "But here is the truth, Hugh. Some doors once opened do not close. If you are the gateway, Then you are the only one who can decide who walks through. Me or him. Hugh stared at her. He saw the cold calculation in her eyes, but underneath it, he saw something else. Desperation. She was terrified. The great Sable Nyx was afraid of what was coming. I don't choose either of you, Hugh said. I choose the door. He turned and walked out. Sable didn't stop him. She just watched him go, her tail twitching once in the darkness. Deep in the sublevels of Sector 12, the air was humid and smelled of ozone and wet earth. This was the Lattice Chapel, a restricted zone where the null glass was cultivated. It didn't look like a server room. It looked like a greenhouse. Columns of raw null glass grew from the floor, like crystalline trees, their branches twisting and merging into the ceiling. They pulsed with a rhythmic, bioluminescent light, blue, violet, deep indigo. It was beautiful, and it was deeply unsettling. Elsie walked among the glass trees, her hands held out, but not touching. She was shivering. "It is dreaming," Elsie whispered. "It is having a nightmare about a fire." Mamie followed close behind, holding a scanning device that looked like a modified glue gun. "Okay, this is officially the creepiest place on the station," she muttered. "And I once got locked in the morgue for 3 hours. At least the dead people were quiet. These trees are humming." "Focus, Mamie," Elsie said. "The footprints." Mamie pointed her scanner at the floor. "Right. Okay. I am tracking a thermal residue. Someone was here less than 6 hours ago. They bypassed the security grid using a phase shifter." "A phase shifter?" Elsie asked. "That is military tech. Vantara tech." "Exactly," Mamie said. She followed the trail to a cluster of smaller glass formations near the back wall. "They stopped here. And oh wow." Attached to the base of one of the glass trees was a small black device. It looked like a leech made of metal. It was pulsing in sync with the glass, sucking light out of it, and transmitting it somewhere else. "A data siphon," Mamie said. "Someone is bleeding the lattice. They are feeding the internal schematics to an external receiver." Elsie leaned in. She closed her eyes. "Not just schematics," she said. "Emotions. Fear. Panic. They are teaching the lattice to be afraid." "Why would they do that?" Mamie asked. "Because a scared animal is easier to drive," Elsie said, her eyes snapping open. "They are preparing it. They are going to force a break." Suddenly, Mamie's scanner beeped rapidly. Elsie, the signal from the leech. It is two-way. It is sending data out, but it is also receiving a command signal." "From where?" Mamie looked at the screen, her large eyes going wide. "From inside the academy. The command signal is coming from the dorms. Specific frequency, Theta 9. Elsie gasped. "Theta 9. "That is Laura's frequency." The two girls looked at each other in the glowing alien forest. The hum of the glass trees seemed to get louder, sounding less like a song and more like a scream. The safe house was a decommissioned storage bay in Sector 4. It was cramped cold and filled with crates of spare engine parts. Hugh sat on a crate, cleaning his weapon. The rhythmic click-clack of the disassembly was the only sound in the room. May stood by the door, keeping watch. Laura sat in the corner, her knees pulled up to her chest. She looked smaller than usual. The confident, sharp-edged top girl was gone, replaced by someone who looked like she was waiting for an execution. Mamie and Elsie had just finished their report. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bone. "Explain," Hugh said. He didn't look up from his gun. He was polishing the barrel with a piece of rag. Laura swallowed. "My father," she said, her voice cracking. "He was a terraformer on the colony of Baxis Prime. When Vantara annexed the system, they took him. They didn't kill him. They put him in a degradation chamber." She looked up, tears leaking from her synthetic eyes. "Do you know what that is? It creates a localized time loop. He lives the same day of torture over and over again. Every week Archondre sends me a clip, just 5 seconds, to show me he is still screaming." May turned from the door. Her face was a mask of fury. "So you sold us out? You gave them the codes, you let the headhunters in." "I gave them patrol routes," Laura cried. "I gave them logistical data. I thought if I gave them enough, they would let him go. I didn't know they would send a kill squad. I didn't know they would try to delete the school." "Traitor," May hissed, stepping forward, her claws extending. "Stop," Hugh said. He put the gun down. He stood up and walked over to Laura. He looked down at her. "You wanted to save him," Hugh said. "Yes," Laura whispered. "I would burn this whole station to stop his screaming. I am sorry. I am so sorry." "Don't be sorry," Hugh said. "Be useful." He turned to the group. "Drace deals in optimization. He predicts outcomes based on data. He knows our patrol routes because Laura gave them to him. He knows our psychological profiles. He thinks he knows exactly what we will do." Hugh looked at Laura. "He thinks you are his asset. He thinks you are broken." Laura wiped her face. "I am broken." "Good," Hugh said. "Broken things have sharp edges. We are going to use that." He pulled up a holographic map of the station. "We are going to send him a message, through Laura. We are going to tell him exactly where I will be. We are going to give him the optimal path to capture me." "And then?" May asked. "And then," Hugh said, his eyes cold and hard, "we are going to be somewhere else. We are going to introduce a variable he cannot predict." "What variable?" Mamie asked. "Me," Hugh said. "We are going to stop playing defense. We are going to attack." The plan was set for 0 hours. The station was in its night cycle, the lights dimmed to simulate a planetary evening. Hugh sat on a gantry overlooking the maintenance bay, watching the repair drones buzz below. He was trying to clear his mind to find the silence he used to wear like armor. But the armor was cracked. The noise was getting in. He felt a presence beside him. He didn't need to look to know it was May. She smelled of rain and static electricity. She sat down next to him, her legs dangling over the edge. "You are thinking about Greyhaven," May said. It wasn't a question. "I am thinking about fire," Hugh admitted. "I am thinking about how easy it would be to let Drace burn." "And us?" May asked. "Would you let us burn too?" Hugh turned to look at her. In the dim light, her silver fur seemed to glow. Her eyes were searching his face, looking for the monster she had been trained to hunt. "I am trying not to," Hugh said. May reached out. Her hand, tipped with lethal claws, was incredibly gentle. She touched the inside of his wrist right over the jagged scar that ran up his forearm. "This isn't from the war," she said softly. "No," Hugh said. "It is surgical," May said. "I have seen marks like this in the biology textbooks. Nerve grafting, interface ports." She looked into his eyes. "I scanned you the first day because you were silent. My sensors couldn't pick up your heartbeat. I thought you were a machine." "Maybe I am," Hugh said. "No," May shook her head. "Machines don't hesitate. Machines don't save first years in a gravity well." Her fingers traced the scar. "I stayed because you were loud. Under the silence you are screaming. You are so loud, Hugh. You are the loudest thing I have ever heard." Hugh looked at her. For a moment, the war inside his head stopped. The need for revenge, the fear of the null glass, the weight of the dead, it all receded. There was just the pressure of her hand on his wrist. "May," he said. His voice was rough. "I am here," she whispered. They leaned in. The distance between them was less than an inch. It was a magnetic pull, inevitable and terrifying. "Tickets!" a voice chirped from the shadows. Hugh and May jerked apart. Mamie popped out from behind a crate holding a datapad. "Tickets! Get your tickets here, first row seats to the tragic romance of the century. Come on, kiss already so I can pay off my student loans with the footage." May hissed, her ears flattening. "Mamie, I will shave you." "I am kidding," Mamie said, holding up her hands. "Half kidding. Mostly I am just interrupting because Elsie says we have movement on the sensors." Also, the tension was making my antennae itch. Hugh let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He looked at May. She looked annoyed, embarrassed, and alive. "We move," Hugh said, standing up. May stood up too. She brushed past him, her tail brushing against his hand. "We are not done with this conversation," she murmured. "I know," Hugh said. The target was a restricted maintenance ring on the outer hull of the station. According to the data Laura had leaked to Drace, this was where Hugh was supposed to be hiding. But according to the real plan, this was where Vantara had docked a stealth corvette to monitor the situation. They moved through the maintenance tunnels in silence. The air here was freezing, the life support set to minimum. "There," Elsie whispered. She pointed to a massive airlock that wasn't on the official schematics. "I can feel them. 3 mines inside, waiting." "Laura," Hugh said. "Open it." Laura stepped forward. She connected her mechanical hand to the port. "I am overriding the safety. They will think it is a maintenance cycle." The massive circular door hissed and began to rotate. "Now," Hugh commanded. They stormed the airlock. It wasn't a battle, it was a breach. Hugh threw a flashbang grenade. It detonated with a blinding white light. May and Mamie surged in stun batons crackling. The 3 Vantara operatives inside didn't stand a chance. They were expecting a scared student to wander into a trap, not a tactical assault team. Within 10 seconds, they were unconscious on the deck. "Secure the bridge," Hugh ordered. They rushed to the cockpit of the stealth corvette. Hugh jumped into the pilot's seat and jacked into the computer. "Mamie, decode the logs," Hugh said. "I want to know what they are hiding." Mamie plugged in. Her eyes scanned the data streams faster than a human could read. "Okay, decrypting, wow. This is heavy." "What is it?" May asked. "Project Silence," Mamie read. 10 years ago, Colony Greyhaven. It wasn't a mining dispute, it was a field test." She looked up at Hugh, her face pale. "They weren't mining ore. They were mining null glass from an asteroid, and they needed a biological interface to control it. They took children. They tried to graft the glass into their nervous systems." Hugh stared at the screen. The memories he had suppressed, the surgery, the pain, the cold voice of the doctors came flooding back. "The other children died," Mamie whispered. "Their brains couldn't handle the probability load. They burned out. But Subject 7 survived." "Me," Hugh said. "You are the prototype," Mamie said. "You aren't just a gateway, Hugh. You are the remote control. That is why the null glass reacts to you. It thinks you are part of itself." "And Drace knows," Hugh said. "He burned the colony to hide the evidence, but he let me escape. He tracked me. He let me grow up, let my nervous system mature, waiting for the day I could handle the full load." "And then he sent you to Crownlight," a voice said from the doorway. They spun around. Headmistress Sable stood there. She wasn't alone. She was flanked by 2 elite security droids. But she wasn't pointing weapons at them. She looked tired. "I knew," Sable said. "I found your file in the encrypted archives 3 years ago. I knew what you were." "So you brought me here to finish the experiment," Hugh accused. "I brought you here to end it," Sable said. "As long as you are out there, Drace will hunt you. And as long as the null glass exists, he will try to use it. I brought you here to lock the lattice. Only you can do it. Only you can shut the door forever." "You used me as bait," Hugh said. "Yes," Sable admitted. "I leaked your location to Drace. I invited him here." "What?" May stepped forward, her hackles raised. "You invited the enemy fleet to our doorstep." "I needed him close," Sable said. "I needed him to commit his resources. If we can trap his flagship in the lattice field, we can crush it. We can end the war tonight." "You are gambling with the lives of every student on this station," May shouted. "I am gambling with the fate of the galaxy," Sable roared back. "Do not lecture me on morality, cadet. I have made choices that would turn your blood to ice." Suddenly, the ship shook violently. The lights turned red. Proximity alert, Mamie yelled. Multiple signatures emerging from hyperspace. It is the Vantara fleet, a heavy cruiser, and oh gods, a dreadnought. It is him, Hugh said. Drace. He is early, Sable said, checking her chrono. He is predicting us. The comms screen flickered to life. The face of Archon Drace appeared. He was a man of sharp angles and pale skin, sitting on a throne of chrome and leather. Headmistress, Drace said smoothly. And Subject 7. How kind of you to gather in one place. It saves me the trouble of hunting. You are walking into a trap, Drace, Sable warned. Am I? Drace smiled. Or am I walking into a harvest? He tapped a key on his throne. In the maintenance bay, the airlock door, the one Laura had opened, slammed shut. The magnetic locks engaged with a deafening clang. System override, Mamie screamed. Our controls are locked out. Someone is hacking us from the inside. They all turned to Laura. Laura stood near the console. Her hand was hovering over the override switch. She looked terrified. Laura, May asked, her voice dangerous. I can't stop it, Laura stammered. It isn't me. My hand is moving on its own. Her mechanical arm jerked fingers flying across the keys against her will. Remote override, Hugh realized. Drace isn't just controlling the ship. He is controlling her. I am sorry, Laura screamed as her hand punched in the command to vent the atmosphere. Atmosphere venting in 10 seconds, the computer announced. Override it, Hugh yelled, lunging for the manual release. But before he could reach it, the wall of the maintenance bay exploded. It wasn't an explosion of fire. It was a phase shift breach. A squad of Vantara elites wearing heavy void armor phased directly through the hull. They didn't shoot to kill. They shot gravity nets. A net hit Sable, pinning her to the wall. Another hit Mamie and Elsie, sticking them together in a tangle of weighted energy. Hugh rolled, dodging a net. He drew his weapon. Take the asset, the Vantara leader commanded. Kill the rest, May threw herself at the leader. She was a blur of silver and fury. She knocked his rifle away, raking her claws across his faceplate. Run, Hugh, May screamed. Get to the lattice. Hugh had a shot. The leader was distracted. He could put a bolt right through his visor. It was the optimal shot. It would save May. But then, he saw Drace's image on the screen laughing, and he saw the open path to the ship's reactor core. If he shot the core, the explosion would take out the elite squad, take out the stealth ship, and maybe even damage the docking ring. It would be a blow to Drace. It would be revenge. Revenge, or rescue. The thought took a microsecond. If he shot the core, May would be caught in the blast. Hugh cursed. He spun around, aiming not at the enemy, not at the core, but at the control panel Laura was struggling with. He fired. The bolt destroyed the panel, severing the remote link to Laura's arm. Close the vent, Hugh screamed. Laura, free from control, slammed her human hand onto the emergency seal. The venting stopped, but the delay cost him. A Vantara soldier raised a gauntlet. It wasn't a weapon. It was a phase anchor. He fired a beam of dark energy at May. The beam hit her square in the chest. May gasped. She didn't fall. She started to flicker. Her body became transparent, then solid, then transparent again. She was being pulled out of reality. May, Hugh screamed. He abandoned cover. He sprinted across the deck, diving for her. He reached out. She reached out. Her eyes were wide, filled with fear, and a terrible, heartbreaking sadness. Hugh, she mouthed. Their fingers brushed. He felt the cold vacuum of the space between dimensions. He felt the static, and then his hand passed through hers as if she were smoke. With a sound like a collapsing star, May vanished. The Vantara squad, having secured their capture, even if it was the wrong target, activated their retrieval beacons. They phased out, disappearing back to their ship. The room was silent except for the sparking of the destroyed console and the heavy breathing of the survivors. Hugh fell to his knees on the cold metal deck. He stared at his empty hand. He had chosen the human path. He had tried to save her, and he had failed. Sable ripped the gravity net off herself. She walked over to Hugh. She looked down at him, her expression unreadable. "She is gone," Sable said. They phased her into the lattice buffer. "She is suspended in probability." Hugh slowly closed his hand into a fist. He looked up. The muddy brown of his eyes was gone. The ash that Elsie had heard was gone. In its place was a cold, absolute zero. It was the look of a man who had walked through hell and decided to buy real estate. "She isn't gone," Hugh said. His voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. "She is just misplaced." He stood up. He walked to the viewport, looking out at the massive Vantara dreadnought, hanging in the void, surrounded by the swirling purple storm of the null glass. "Drace wants a gateway," Hugh said. "He wants me to open the door." He turned back to the group. Mamie was crying. Elsie was in shock. Laura was holding her mechanical arm, looking at him with awe and terror. "I am going to open it," Hugh said. "I am going to open it so wide that it swallows him whole." He looked at the spot where May had vanished. "I am coming," he whispered to the empty air. "Keep the light on." He turned to Sable. "Give me access to the cathedral," Hugh ordered. It wasn't a request. "I am done hiding in the back row." The Crownlight Academy was no longer a school. It was a dying star enclosed in a cage of steel and glass. The null glass lattice, once a subtle hum in the background of station life, had fractured. It wasn't just leaking, it was pouring. Cracks in reality, spider-webbed across the bulkheads. One moment a corridor would lead to the dormitories. The next, it opened into a hard vacuum that wasn't there, or a jungle from a planet 3 sectors away. The air smelled of burnt sugar and old electricity, the scent of memories catching fire. Headmistress Sable Nix's voice boomed over the station-wide address system. It did not sound like the voice of a frantic administrator. It sounded like a judge passing a final sentence. "Attention all personnel. The containment protocols have failed. The lattice is entering a critical cascade. We are initiating the final scan. This is not a drill. This is not a simulation. Those who can navigate the collapsing architecture will graduate. Those who cannot will become part of the empty space." There was no cruelty in her voice, only the terrible cold pragmatism of a captain scuttling her own ship to contain a plague. In the sublevels where the reality leakage was thickest, Hugh led his team toward the epicenter. They weren't running anymore. They were wading through a slurry of shifting time. "Keep your eyes on the floor," Hugh ordered, his voice cutting through the distortion. "Don't look at the walls. The walls are lying." Mamie scrambled over a pile of rubble that looked like it was made of frozen lightning. She was clutching a modified phase emitter, her knuckles white. "If this is a double date," Mamie wheezed, dodging a floating piece of masonry that turned into a flock of birds before vanishing. "I am demanding a table change, and a refund, and possibly a different timeline." Elsie, usually the quietest, was the anchor. She held Mamie's arm with one hand and Laura's shoulder with the other. Her eyes were squeezed shut. "They are screaming," Elsie whispered. "The memories in the glass. They are all screaming for an exit." "We are the exit," Hugh said. "Laura, the door." They stood before the massive blast doors of the cathedral, the central chamber where the null glass core was housed. The metal was glowing with a sickly, violet heat. Laura stepped forward. She looked terrible. The guilt of her betrayal hung on her like a heavy coat, but her hands were steady. She raised her mechanical arm. The interface ports on her fingers spun, syncing with the chaotic encryption of the door. "It is locked from the inside," Laura said, her voice hollow. "High-level override. Archon Drace is waiting for us." "Open it," Hugh said. "He will kill us," Laura said. "He doesn't want to kill us," Hugh corrected. "He wants to hire us. Open the door." Laura engaged the mechanism. With a groan of tortured metal, the blast doors split. The interior of the cathedral was breathtaking. It was a cavern of infinite depth, lined with towering pillars of raw null glass that pulsed like the neurons of a god. In the center, suspended over a pit of swirling probability fog, was a platform. Archon Drace stood there. He wore a suit of pristine white armor, unmarred by the chaos tearing the station apart. He looked like a statue of order in a hurricane of madness. And floating behind him, trapped in a diamond-shaped prism of hard light, was May. She was unconscious, her silver fur matted with blood, her body suspended in a state of phase flux. She flickered in and out of existence, a ghost caught in a jar. "Welcome," Drace said. His voice didn't need a microphone. The acoustics of the glass amplified it, making it sound like it was coming from inside their own heads. "I was worried the chaos might be too much for your primitive navigational skills." Hugh walked onto the bridge leading to the platform. He didn't draw his weapon. He walked with his hands open, palms visible. "Let her go, Drace," Hugh said. Drace smiled. It was a polite corporate smile. "The feline she is merely collateral, Hugh. A variable I had to isolate to ensure your arrival. You are the asset. You always were." "I am not an asset," Hugh said, stopping 10 feet from the Archon. "I am a student, and I am late for class." Drace laughed. "Still clinging to the persona. It is fascinating. You truly believe you are just a boy from the Rim, don't you?" Drace raised a hand. The null glass pillars flared. "Let me show you what you really are." The core activated. It didn't explode. It imploded, sucking the team's consciousness into a vortex of data. Hugh opened his eyes. He was standing on the bridge of a Vantara dreadnought. He wore the uniform of a Grand Admiral. His chest was heavy with medals. He looked out the viewport and he saw a galaxy at peace, perfectly ordered, perfectly silent. There was no war because there was no dissent. He turned, and he saw his reflection. His eyes were cold, dead things. He was a monster, but he was a hero. Shift. He was back on Greyhaven. But he wasn't a child. He was lying in the mud, a hole in his chest, staring up at the burning sky. He had died there. His story had ended before it began. He was nothing. Shift. He was sitting in a garden. He was old. He had a family. He didn't know anything about nullglass or wars. He was happy. But it was a shallow happiness, thin as paper. He was ignorant. The visions swirled around him, 1,000 lives, 1,000 variations of Hugh. In some, he was a king. In others, a beggar. In most, he was a weapon. "Do you see?" Drace's voice echoed in the void. "Probability is infinite, Hugh. But history is a singular line. I want to build a line where order prevails, where pain is minimized through control. I need you to navigate the lattice. I need you to choose the path." "Why me?" Hugh's thought voice screamed. "Because you are the interface," Drace replied. "You survived the graft. You are the only biological entity that can touch the probability stream without going insane. Join me, Hugh. We can write a perfect universe." It was tempting. The pain of his life, the loss, the fear, the constant noise under his skin could be edited out. He could save May. He could save everyone. All he had to do was surrender his will. Back on the platform in the physical world, Hugh's body stood, rigid eyes rolled back. Drace watched him with hungry anticipation. "He is stabilizing," Drace noted, checking a datapad. "The integration is at 80%. "No," Laura whispered. She was standing near the console that controlled the containment prism holding May. Her mechanical hand was trembling. "He isn't a machine," Laura said. "He isn't a keyboard for you to type on." Drace didn't even look at her. "Quiet, traitor. You served your purpose. Your debt is paid." "Not yet," Laura said. She looked at Mamie and Elsie. She gave them a small, sad smile. "Tell my father I tried," Laura said. She slammed her mechanical hand into the console. But she didn't just hack it. She initiated a total system purge of her own access codes. "Command override," Laura screamed, her voice breaking. User Laura 7. Authorization 0-day exploit. Target containment grid and user profile. What are you doing? Drace roared, spinning around. I am deleting the leverage, Laura wept. Sparks flew from her arm. The console shrieked. Laura wasn't just opening the cage. She was erasing herself from the Vantara database. She was burning her digital identity, her clearance, her very existence in the system that held her father prisoner. Without her profile, the automated kill switch on her father would fail safe. She would be a ghost, unable to ever go home, unable to ever be found. Access denied. User not found. Containment disengaged. The prism shattered. May fell to the floor, gasping, the phase flux fading from her body. Laura collapsed, her mechanical arm, smoking dead weight at her side. She looked smaller, dimmer, as if part of her soul had been scrubbed away with the code. Hugh, May screamed, ignoring her own pain. She scrambled toward the rigid figure of the boy. Inside the vision, Hugh heard her. It wasn't a sound. It was an anchor. A silver thread dropping into the abyss. Don't believe what they show you. Hugh grabbed the thread. He pulled. He shattered the vision of the Admiral. He shattered the vision of the corpse. He shattered the happy, ignorant old man. He opened his eyes in the cathedral. He gasped, air rushing into his lungs like fire. He looked at Drace. The muddy brown of his eyes was gone, replaced by a swirling, terrifying nebula of violet light. Get out of my head, Hugh growled. Drace took a step back, genuinely surprised. You rejected the optimization, you chose chaos. May pulled herself up, standing beside Hugh. She was bleeding. She was swaying, but her eyes were sharp enough to cut glass. He didn't choose chaos, May hissed. He chose truth. She grabbed Hugh's arm. Hugh, listen to me. Greyhaven, the massacre. You remember running right? You remember hiding? Yes, Hugh said, his head pounding. That is a lie, May said. That is the edit Headmistress Sable put in your head. The plot twist hit the room like a gravity bomb. You didn't run, May said, her voice fierce. When Vantara came, when they tried to activate the prototype null glass, to rewrite the colony's resistance, you didn't run. You were 10 years old, Hugh, and you walked right into the machine. Hugh froze. A crack formed in the wall of his memory. A chair. A helmet too big for a child. A doctor is screaming, he is taking control. The fire stopping in midair. You connected to the prototype, May continued. You held the reality together. You stopped the null glass from swallowing the planet long enough for the evacuation ships to launch. You didn't survive Greyhaven, Hugh. You saved it. Hugh fell to his knees. The weight of the truth was heavier than any gravity well. Sable found you in the wreckage, May said gently. Your mind was fractured. You had seen too much, so she locked the memories away. She broke the key into 4 pieces and hid them. She pointed to herself then, to Mamie, Elsie, and Laura. Us, May said. The top girls. We weren't just bodyguards. We were living hard drives. Each of us carried a piece of your trauma code in our subconscious. That is why we scanned you first. That is why we couldn't look away. Our programming recognized its owner. My mission, May confessed, tears welling in her eyes, was to monitor you, to keep you stable, to make sure the gateway never opened again. She reached out and touched his face. But the mission failed, because I don't want to control you. I just want you to be okay. Hugh knelt there, the pieces of his life rearranging themselves. He wasn't a victim. He wasn't a survivor. He was a guardian who had been forced to forget his own strength. He looked up at Drace. Drace looked amused. A touching melodrama, but irrelevant. You are still the interface, Hugh, and I have the override codes. Drace raised a gauntlet. The null glass pillars turned a violent, angry red. Submit, or I delete this entire station and everyone in it. Hugh stood up. He didn't stand up like a soldier. He stood up like a king reclaiming a throne. You want to optimize? Hugh asked. His voice was calm, but the air around him began to vibrate. You want to use the null glass to write a story where you win? It is inevitable, Drace said. There is a problem with your math, Hugh said. You forgot the human variable. Which is spite, Hugh said. He didn't attack Drace. He turned and slammed both hands into the floor of the platform, directly into the null glass stream. Hugh, what are you doing? Mamie screamed from where she was tending to Laura. I am not blocking him. Hugh gritted out, his veins glowing with violet light. I am amplifying him. What? Drace paused, confused. You want to rewrite history, Hugh roared. Fine, let's write. Hugh poured his will into the machine. But he didn't try to change the past. He didn't try to erase the war. He opened the floodgates of truth. He used the null glass to broadcast. Not a signal, but a reality overwrite. He projected the memories of Drace's crimes, the burning of Greyhaven, the torture of Laura's father, the illegal experiments directly into the minds of every being in the sector. It wasn't a video feed. It was an experiential download. Across the Vantara fleet, captains suddenly felt the heat of burning children. On the station, students felt the despair of the degradation chambers. Hugh wasn't fighting with lasers. He was fighting with empathy. He was forcing the entire universe to feel exactly what Drace had done. Stop it! Drace screamed, clutching his head. This is unauthorized, this is raw data, it is unrefined. It is the truth, Hugh yelled. And the truth is heavy, Drace lunged. Kill him, he ordered his suit, AI. The suit fired. A beam of plasma aimed right for Hugh's heart. May moved. She didn't block it. She parried it. She used a shard of broken null glass as a mirror, catching the beam and refracting it back at Drace's feet. Mamie Elsie! May shouted. Buy him time. Mamie popped up dual-wielding stun pistols. Eat static shiny man! She unleashed a barrage of suppressing fire, forcing Drace to raise a shield. Elsie stood up. She didn't shoot. She screamed. A psychic scream amplified by the cathedral that hit Drace like a physical hammer, disrupting his concentration. You finish it! May yelled, dancing around Drace, her claws seeking the joints in his armor. Hugh was deep in the code now. He could see Drace's tactical computer, trying to predict the outcome. Prediction, Hugh strikes left. Countermeasure, shield right. Hugh saw the prediction, and he chose the opposite. He stepped left, but he didn't strike. He healed. He used the null glass to repair a crack in the platform under Drace's feet. Drace's computer was confused. Why would the enemy repair the terrain? It froze for a microsecond, recalculating. That was all Hugh needed. Now! Hugh shouted. He didn't fire a weapon. He simply reached out and twisted the probability around Drace. He created a closed loop, a paradox cage. Drace fired his weapon. The bolt flew out, curved around the room, and hit Drace in the back. Drace tried to step forward. The floor shifted, and he was stepping backward. What have you done? Drace shrieked. My algorithms, they are perfect. They are perfect, Hugh agreed, standing up, smoke rising from his uniform. That is the problem. You only plan for the optimal outcome. So I put you in a room where every optimal choice is wrong. Hugh walked closer. The null glass swirled around Drace, forming a prison of mirrors. I am not killing you, Archon, Hugh said. That would be too easy. I am leaving you here, in the probability buffer. For how long? Drace gasped, falling to his knees, as his own armor began to lock up, confused by the contradictory data. Until you learn to lose, Hugh said. He clenched his fist. The null glass mirrors slammed shut. Archon Drace Halden vanished. He wasn't dead. He was simply paused, trapped in a single second of realization that he had lost to a boy he thought was a tool. The cathedral fell silent. The violet light faded to a soft, dormant blue. The shaking stopped. The cracks in the station walls began to seal themselves, the reality stabilizing as the toxic element, Drace, was removed from the equation. Hugh swayed. He looked at his hands. They were trembling. May was there instantly catching him before he hit the floor. "I got you," she whispered. Hugh looked at her. He looked at Mamie, who was blowing smoke off her pistols. He looked at Elsie, who was helping a pale, silent Laura to her feet. "Is it over?" Hugh asked. "The class is dismissed," May said, smiling through her own tears. 3 days later. The cleanup was slow. The station was battered, but it held. The Vantara fleet, thrown into chaos by the sudden empathy bomb that Hugh had detonated in their minds, had retreated. Mutinies were breaking out across their sector as soldiers refused to follow orders that now felt physically painful to execute. Headmistress Sable Nix stood in the center of the Grand Lecture Hall. She was not wearing her uniform. She wore plain civilian robes. Security officers, real Federation peacekeepers this time, stood waiting. "I concealed the nature of the null glass," Sable said to the assembly. Her voice was calm. "I kidnapped a child. I altered memories. I used students as soldiers." She looked at the back row. "I accept my sentence," she said. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't make excuses. She simply nodded to the officers and let them lead her away. As she passed the back row, she paused. She looked at Hugh. "The memory is yours now, Hugh," she said softly. "All of it. Do what you will with it." Hugh didn't say anything. He just nodded. It was a nod of respect, not for what she had done, but for how she paid the bill. The hall emptied out, leaving only the group. Laura sat on the edge of a desk. She had lost her high-level access. She had lost her connection to her father, though news had come that the degradation chambers on Baxis Prime had been shut down during the mutiny. She was a ghost in the machine now, a girl with no digital footprint. "I feel light," Laura said, looking at her mechanical hand. "I don't exist anymore. According to the database, I was never born." "Cool," Mamie said, hopping onto the desk next to her. "That means you don't have to pay taxes, or tuition. I am jealous," Elsie smiled. "We will write you a new file, Laura. A handwritten one." May stood by the window, looking out at the stars. They were real stars this time. No simulation. Hugh walked up beside her. He was still wearing his flight suit, though the probationary tag had been ripped off. "You are quiet," Hugh said. "I am scanning," May said. "And heart rate elevated," May recited. Pupils dilated. Cortisol levels dropping, oxytocin rising. She turned to look at him. "It appears the subject is happy." "Is he?" Hugh asked. "Are you?" May countered. Hugh looked at the reflection in the glass. He saw the scars. He remembered the fire of Greyhaven. He remembered the feeling of being a weapon. Those things wouldn't go away. They were part of the architecture now. But he also felt the warmth of May's arm brushing against his. He heard Mamie laughing at something Elsie said. "I am not happy," Hugh said honestly. "But I am here. And for the first time, I am not waiting for the roof to fall." May reached out and took his hand. No claws, just fingers. "That is a start," she said. 1 month later. The Grand Lecture Hall was full. The new headmaster, a boring bureaucratic walrus of a man, was droning on about safety protocols and the new, ethical guidelines for probability manipulation. The scan beam swept across the room. It checked the front row. It checked the middle row. Then it moved to the back. It hovered over Hugh. The students held their breath. They remembered the rumors. They remembered the boy who broke the sky. The scan light turned green. A simple, respectful chirp. Identity confirmed. Hugh didn't flinch. He didn't hide. He sat comfortably, his boots resting on the rail of the seat in front of him. May, sitting next to him, nudged him with her elbow. "You are smiling," she whispered. "Stop it. You look suspicious." "I am just thinking," Hugh whispered back. "About what?" "About the test next week," Hugh said. "I think I might actually study for this one." "Liar," May purred. "Okay," Hugh admitted. I was thinking that I finally found the right seat. The scan moved on. The lecture continued. But in the back row, the king of the null glass leaned back, closed his eyes, and listened to the silence. It wasn't empty anymore. It was full of possibilities. "Okay," Hugh whispered to the universe. "My turn."